welcome to another live demonstration. Today I want to introduce you to the UART pastel sanded paper. So UART have done this paper for a long while, and it's usually available in sanded colour. And what it is it's a really lovely grippy paper. So it grips your pastels, and it means you don't have to use a fixative on top of. The colour they had was a sand colour, and what they had was a lot of different grits. So you start with a nice smooth grit right up to a much rougher grit, and you can choose in between. Recently they've introduced a dark range in their sanded pastel paper, so this is really exciting. So I've got a trial pack, which is always a really useful thing to start with, because what you can do is you can choose your grit, and you'll see on the back that they've got numbers 8, 6, all the way up to 400. And this gives you the smoothness of the paper, or the grit. So the 800 is the much smoother surface, and I don't know if you can see it, but I can. Can you see that, Gary? Not really.
Oh, no, a little bit.
Little bit.
The corners.
Yeah. So this is much more grippy and it feels rougher, and this is still grippy but much smoother. So these trial packs are great to be able to choose a surface you like working on. You will notice that actually the dark will vary from quite a dark tone to a mid-grey, and that just depends on the different grit. Doesn't matter, I think it gives you a nice different background. And as you know, I'm not a background person, so when the background's done for me, I'm happy. So the trial packs are great just to give you a chance that you get a little sheet, and then you can try it and try what other mediums work with it. I've also found it takes water or wet mediums as well, which is great because some pastel papers don't. So it's a very versatile and really nice surface to work on. So dark pastel paper. So what I've done is I've gone for the most contrasting colour I could think of, so I've gone for a white flower. Now I have looked to find out what the flower is, and I can't find out. I don't know what it is, so if anyone is able to tell us, I've looked on the internet. It's one of those I've probably taken going around a garden centre somewhere, and I don't know what it is. I should make notes of names, and then it'll be much easier. But at the moment, looking on the internet for a white flower, I've still not come across this. But it doesn't matter. We'll call it a white flower for now. So white against that black background is the biggest contrast I could think of. So I'm going to be using soft pastels. I'm going to be using pastel pencils, and I'm also going to be using a liquefier. Now this is Tim Fisher's soft pastel liquefier, and it's a spray bottle, so you spray it on to wet the surface. I'm not going to be using it in a spray. I've decanted a little bit into a pot because I want to brush it on. It works the same. Now you can activate pastels with water, but what I tend to find that they do is they dilute, and the colour tends to dissolve a little bit. I have found with this liquefier, the colour does tend to stay much stronger.
Anita,
sorry.
Somebody has just suggested, somebody called 2K2 has suggested that it could be called a granny's bonnet.
A granny's bonnet. I take your word on it. I honestly don't know. What I do is I take my camera, go around garden centres, lots of pictures, and I was thinking about it, and it's great to have a really nice database of your own images. I often find an image will inspire you to kind of go, oh, let me try that in pastel. Or you could just try the same image in acrylic, in watercolour, and just that same image you get familiar with, so the image doesn't bother you, and then you learn different techniques from a familiar image. So yeah, Granny's bonnet, we have a forerunner at the moment, but thank you for that, because I have looked and I couldn't find. So it's a really nice white, but there are other colours very subtly inside. I'm going to use the white. I've drawn it down using a pastel pencil, and I've chosen grey because if I'd used a strong colour, if I'd used white, it probably could have disappeared and I wouldn't have been able to see in the outline. Even though I've got the image in front of me, I could have brought it back. But I've chosen grey because it doesn't really matter if the white gets contaminated with it. It's not too strong a colour. So the outline, just think about the colour you're using, because if you used a bright red or a bright orange, it will contaminate the other pastels, even though you can go over and you can fix. That's the great thing about pastels. And the great thing about pastels on this surface is it's really forgiving. So I'm literally just putting colour down. So putting pastel down and just, it's white, the whole flower's white, so I'm putting white down. You can see I'm not going up to the edge or being really neat, because there's lots of techniques I want to put in. I'm just going to look at a little bit of colour. Now with pastels, I did find you need so many. Try to keep it really simple, but actually it's a little difficult to work because you need so many different tones and values and colours, because they don't overly mix. They much prefer to be on top of each other. So I found I have grabbed a lot of pastels. Probably won't use them all, to be honest. And all I'm trying to also do is bring out colours which are very subtle in the flower, but will just give it that extra. It's not just white. If it was just white, it'll be quite dull. So I've put colour on, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the liquefier to give myself a initial layer. So this is wetting it down, and because I'm much more familiar and comfortable with a brush, I do like to do this. I like the feel and being able to move pastel. And the great thing about pastel also is you can layer and fix, and this paper is very tough, so I can erase and I can rub out, and I probably will need to, because the reason it's set out like this is because I get it everywhere. I'll get pastel mark prints on here, on the outside, and I'll get it on the middle. So I'm trying to keep myself as clean as possible, or protect the paper as much as possible. So it looks a bit like overkill, but I know how messy I'll get. And the great thing is with this, I can rub it out. And I've had to look at different erasers, but the one I find works best for me is this Faber-Castell one, and that's why you have trial packs. It takes it off really nice and cleanly, and then I just use the end of this eraser just to brush it off. So I will be doing that quite often throughout the... We decided it's a drawing because I'm not covering the whole of the surface of the paper. So there's this debate whether pastel painting or pastel drawing. I think the consensus is a pastel painting is a pastel which covers almost the entirety of the surface, so it's covered with pastel. And a pastel drawing is one, like I'm doing, that still keeps that surface seen. Doesn't really matter, to be honest, but it's just one of those things that people ask.
Anita?
Yes?
Amber Ruby Art says that they really enjoy the UART paper, and it's good on coloured pencils as well.
Yeah. Like I said, I've had a quick play. I'm doing the soft pastels just to show you how grippy it is. But yeah, other surfaces. And I was thought gouache or mixed media is going to be fabulous, where you can use pastel and paint. And this is why I'm using the liquefier, just to show you a wet kind of technique. But good, I'm glad you enjoy it, and it is a really nice grippy surface. Okay, so you can see how that's softening, and I'm actually quite pleased with this. Pastels aren't my favourite medium, just because I don't do a lot of them, and you get out of the... I'm going to have to change my brush, it's getting rubbish. I'll change to a shaper, colour shaper, see how this works. I don't think it will work as well, but it will work. I'll use the bigger one. So the brush was getting too fuzzy. It's an old brush. It's a masking fluid brush, to be honest. So what it wasn't was just give me the clean lines I was looking for. But I'll find a brush later. But this works. What I'm also doing is I'm thinking about the direction of any lines on the petals, and you can see very tiny fine lines, and I'm just following that direction. Some of it is because it helps me plot and decide the shape of the flower, but it also, because you don't always cover again, they're there, and they actually, if you've done it in the direction straight away, they won't look odd. I'm not putting enough colour on there to get it to move. So you're just moving the pigment around. I'm going to have to go back to that softer brush. I'll work with it. It was better. It's just getting fuzzy at the moment, but I'll work with that. I'm not looking for a good brush. I just want to be able to move the pigment. Like I say, this is designed in a spray bottle to spray it on, but I like the control you have. Just pushing it around, doesn't go in areas you don't want it to. And see how that purple I applied is much more subtle than it was originally. So not enough pigment on here, but layering. The key to pastels is layering. So all I've done is kind of plotted out where the shapes of the flowers are. So now I can go back in and just look. I'm going to try and work in a structured manner, Gary. Okay. So I am going to try and go downwards, because then I don't lean on the paper. Can't guarantee I'll remember to do this. So I've put the liquefier on, but look how I can go back in and bring out the lovely colours on top. So great for layering, this paper is. As artists, you have to see more colours than a lot of people. So you're having to pick out real subtle colours that not everyone will see in a white flower. They'll see it's white. As an artist, you have to see those really subtle changes and tones.
Anita?
Yes?
A couple of things. Carl is asking whether the roughness of the paper could ruin your brushes. Do you have to be, is that why you chose
I chose an inexpensive brush because I didn't need a good brush. Unless you're scrubbing on it, it's not going to be a big factor, but I just chose a small synthetic brush because I know I'm using liquefier, and I don't want it to get mixed up when I'm using watercolours, because as much as I will clean this brush now, it still could contaminate a watercolour. So if I used it in watercolour, it may make splotches or make the paint separate. So that's why I'm a little careful with watercolour brushes, keep them for watercolour, and use other brushes for other mediums. I don't cross-contaminate very readily, just because of the contamination. Watercolour's very sensitive. But yeah, it's just an inexpensive brush that I picked up, and it does that job. I don't need an expensive brush to just move the pigment around.
One more question. Graham wants to know, does the liquefier fix the pastel?
Don't know, let's find out. It's fixed it quite well. It's not a fixative, it's a liquefier, so it liquefies the pastel. What it will do is fix it enough, because you've you've diluted that really dustiness. And this is where I'm going to use my eraser. So you can use a fixative to do this as long as it's wet. So if you do want a layer that's fixed, use something like, I think I was using this earlier, this is a fixative, but it's wet, and again I could decant and brush it on, and that will give you a very fixed layer of the pastel wash. So there you go, see how I'm just cleaning up. Okay, it's going to get much messier when I stick to the soft pastels. Where was I? So I'm just looking at the original and I'm just picking out the white highlights. Now these pastels will dull and you don't get some lovely sharp edges, which is why I will go back in for a final flourish with pastel pencils for any sharpening. But I think these are really nice just to get that colour down really quickly, because your pastel pencils are a lot more expensive and they do wear down. I noticed that it does take the pencil down quite quickly because of that grip on the surface. Okay, so yes, it's all white, but I can still go back in. This, like I keep saying with pastel, it's layering, so you can do a lot of fixing or altering. And often I will say, especially with watercolour, is don't fiddle, walk away from it, let the medium do the work. But I do find with some mediums, especially like with pastel, you can actually alter and go back in and work on areas that you're not happy with. But what I would suggest is you walk away before you did that. Just walk away and come back to it either next day or in a few hours, and that's when you will re-see your work and you'll see what actually needs to be done rather than what you think needs doing at the time. And the difficult thing is when I'm doing it live, I can't do that. I will say to you, work away, move away, but I can't physically do that. Well, I can, just be left with Gary. But it is a really good skill to have, is to be able to say, no, stop now, come back to it after a cup of tea or something. And it really does change how you view your drawing. I think it was the other week I said I didn't like what I'd done, came back to it and was actually really surprised, went, oh, that's not as bad as I thought. So it really is a thing to learn and a thing to stick to. Okay, so just add in the white, but you can see that wonderful purple underneath is helping add a little bit more colour, a little bit of a wave there. Oh, I should remember there's some purple at the end of this. One of these. So I think we've decided on Granny's bonnet and we've not been told any different. Didn't know that, never heard of it. Now I have. Okay. Right, what do I need to do now? I want to go in. So the reason I chose this is because it's got a lovely architectural structure. It's really shaped and sharp. And that's not the dark one. And it's nice and white, but with those other subtle colours. So they have little, I don't know, feel like to say trumpet kind of inners, which I'm just trying to show that they have little holes in the middle here. I'm going to have a blow, and this is where the pastel may go everywhere. Shape. So some things, like these areas in the middle here, need to be quite sharp. They have quite a consistent shape. I'm just looking here, looking at this one. So you have a ridge here, and it comes round here. It softens into there. Right, what should I do now? I'm going to now start with my pastel pencils, and I will start just to push it together, because I purposely left these areas just so I can see the petals behind, and now I'm just going to push them in, and then I'll do the stem. Then I think we'll take a short break so I can think and focus on putting detail in rather than me continue to go ahead. And I'm actually really pleased I haven't got it actually everywhere where I thought I would. So going in with an ivory. The pastel pencils, you'll notice I've sharpened them to a nice long point. They come like this. And the UART does take the pencils down quite quickly. You can get a really wonderful long sharpen of pastel pencils by using the Derwent long point pencil sharpener. Now, this sharpens lots of different pencils really easily. Pastels are a little bit more difficult, and what I would recommend is you do it slowly. With any pastel pencil, because of the soft core, you just need to do it very gently and very slowly. Normally it's attached to a table, but I find that's quite difficult. I have to go across because the only area we can put it is over to the side. And you'll see I'm doing it very slowly, allowing it to be pulled in, but actually not pulling in all the way. And you can see there, that's going well. I might just give it a few more turns. You get over eager and you keep sharpening and then it snaps inside. And I'm sure I can do it a little bit even sharper. You can get a really sharp point. But that is a soft pastel, and see how well it sharpens with this. Easy, if it does get a bit of lead in the back, it's easy to clean. Just take the lead out here. I've got a paper clip with me. And then just make sure you keep the sharpener clean. I usually use a graphite pencil occasionally in between pastel pencils, and that just keeps the blades clean and sharp. So, real favourite for sharpening pastel pencils. Okay, let's pick up. I'll probably end up having them all in my hand because I like to see the colour, because the tips aren't always a good indicator. Now I'm just bringing in that little bit of sharpness. Doesn't need to be too dark, so I can take that back. One way of keeping the pencil sharp while you're using it is to turn it. You'll see I will turn each time I do a mark, and that will keep that point quite sharp because you're self-sharpening on this paper. Okay. Just bring that edge back. Oh, don't know if you can hear that, that's quite grippy. Quite sharp. Just trying to think how this petal works. Not overly bothered because I do know it's going to get covered with the next layer. So all I'm doing is just thinking, maybe do I need any more light or dark, and how can I just show the contours of these petals. So I can use I've been very good and I've got colour shapers, but they're great. I do like to feel and touch just to soften. So on some layers, maybe bottom layers, I will soften and just blend in a little bit. But my final layers, I like to see pastel looking like pastel. It's just really nice. You're kind of moulding the shape on the paper. I'm just trying to indicate these really sharp structured petals. Goes in there. Okay. Now this is a lot darker than this, but it's still a little bit too, I want them to touch. Okay. Stand back, because to be honest I can't see quite as well as you can with my tonal values, so I need to just stand back and re-look and see what you can see a little bit. I'm just making sure that these lovely shapes here have a nice shape and are not lost. This one is really quite much darker in the middle there.
Mind your head, Anita.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm leaning because I'm concentrating. That bit there still needs colour on. It is difficult with it being wide. You just have to really think about your shading and maybe exaggerate it a little bit more than you see without putting a lot of black on, because you want these flowers to be white and stick forward. Needs more white, it's lost. Maybe a little purple. I think it's just very bland. So you're seeing more colours. And I think a bit of blue. And then I'm going to take a break because I know I'm just over thinking. And we'll come back, we'll have a look and see what detail I really need to put on, not what I think I need. Okay, I'm going to stop because I need to just think, review, step back and come back to it. So join me in a minute after this short break and then we can just really look at tonal values and then put that middle bit in and then see what we really need to do. So join me in a moment.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I could shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Hello and welcome back. Gary's just informed me that on the live chat someone says you're not supposed to blow pastel dust. I know that. It's not recommended because of that really fine dust particles. The reason I've had to do it is because I can't lift the board up and dab it or bang the back to get any excess off. And if I used a brush, it would just smear the pastel. So ideally, in your home circumstances, you just tap the back of the board or the paper or just tap it off to get rid of dust. It's not advised to blow, but I have to work with Gary's taping down of boards.
I knew it would be my fault.
So yeah, that's the reason I did it. Because if I did just try to brush it off, you can see here, this is what will happen. So I'm just going to clean up, and it's really easy to do, but also I can reshape. Like I say, I've tried lots of different erasers on this paper, and this is the one that I find gave me that cleaner line. And then just using the edge of another eraser just to dust off. I think I've done really well. I'm quite pleased with myself, how clean I've actually kept my work. And yes, you can use the crystal paper, or I think it's called glycine paper in other places, to rest your hand on. It doesn't always stop stray bits of pastel getting on the work, but that's what I've used here. I've used crystal paper on these edges, so it's less work for me to have to clean up those edges as well. Okay, so I've had a chance to look and think about areas I want to work on. So I have a stem. And this actually comes up here, which I've lost, but I want to put on. You don't need the exact colours. You can kind of make them work. Because what it will mean is you need absolutely thousands of pastels. So it's an artist's interpretation of the colours you see as an artist. Right, darker one. It's not black, I think it's sepia. I'm just going to sharpen any areas I need a bit of. And the reason I'm using the dark last is because I don't want to overplay any really darkened areas. I'm just going to, you have to make them a little bit stronger than you see on a photograph. Photographs tend to, what was the word you used? When you said my white photograph was
It's a little overexposed.
Overexposed, apparently. So colours become overexposed, and this is where, as an artist, you need to just try and imagine them and bring them back. I want to work on this petal because it's a little wrong. So I want to try and take a little bit of pastel off. So one of my favourites, the Tombow eraser, because it gives you that fine detail here. So that goes across there. So look how easy it is to alter, to think about. Just areas which you've missed or lost in the drawing process. So that comes around like that. That's much better. And this is great. You can just keep playing and altering, and go back with this paper. This paper's really open to erasing.
Anita,
Yes.
quick question.
Yes.
2K2, the same person who identified your flower,
Yes.
wants to know if you've got any tips for storing your sketches, because she loves using pastels, but they always get ruined when they're stored.
Okay. Crystal paper. Put it on top. I mean, you can use a fixative. I've no problem with a fixative. I don't like to use a fixative. You can maybe I would use it in layers, but I don't like to use a fixative for a final piece because I find it tends to dull and take that pastel feelness away. There may be people who are very successful in using a fixative, but for me personally, I would prefer a finished piece put behind glass. But if you're not doing it as a finished piece of this crystal or glycine, put it on the top, knock off all the excess dust to start with by tapping the back. One of these, and then you just put bulldog clips around the edge, and then store flat or store between two pieces of cardboard, which you can cut out of boxes, and then they're ready to go. And I've had pastels, you know, for years. You come back to them, they may have lost a bit of colour, bit of the texture, but it's very easy just to add a little bit of texture back on if you then decided you want to put it into a frame.
The velour paper is good as well, because that doesn't really lose the pastel.
No, velours, it sticks. This grips, but you can see I can blend. Velour's very different. That's another wonderful one. I'm sure I've done a clip using velour, but that is uber grippy, and it doesn't allow for a lot of blending. It does on subsequent layers, but very initial layers, it doesn't allow huge blending because what the fibres are doing are gripping the surface. It's cleaning up and then smudging. Sometimes I don't mind those because it just looks like a sparkle. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to keep that wonderful background and I can't tip and... Okay, stop fiddling. Right, I'm going in for the yellow because I'm starting to fiddle, and actually sometimes the last bit of detail, white, is what I need, so it gives you... And then I'm just going to think about the shapes I can see, and then I'm going to make some more up. So this is quite dense in the middle.
Oh, it's really squeaky.
Sorry.
I have to take my headphones off, it's so squeaky.
Oh, you know what? I could do it even more. No, I wouldn't. Well, I would, actually. I quite like the squeaky chalkboard kind of chalk. That's what it is. It's like a chalkboard, isn't it? But not quite as smooth. Sorry. But it's going to need to be done. I need to put... Right.
Made all the hairs on my arm stand up.
Yeah. Don't bother me, it's fine. Right, I need to look at this because I want it to be a little less blocky as it is. I want to give some different... So see that last long one I did? That really breaks up the shape. Right, in with orange. I know you can't overly see orange, but I think it just helps this shape sing a little bit. Else they get very lost. So this is the artist. And yellow, a little bit yellower, because it's in a dark area, so it was not enough light. I'm going to blow again. White. This is why I usually hold them, because I can see them. Just lighten. See areas that I need to You can see why I did that last. Let me stand back because it will need a little bit of tonal value. So it's in a little pocket here. Let's just bring those pockets out. It's really difficult with white. You don't want to overdo, but there are areas which you just need to indicate are behind. So I'm going to go in with this darker area just to bring out a few of the darkest areas, very gently, because I don't want it to. And I think just those little tiny details and a little bit of this dark is really all I need. I'm looking and fixing, that's what I'm doing. Okay. So, to be honest, I'd probably keep working. I want to keep working and just adding and working on. But you can see how this UART paper works. So let's have a little reveal. And like I say, I'm not fond of fixing, but it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. People use hairspray. I wouldn't recommend. The reason being, fixatives designed for pastels have been developed to work with pastels and the pastel surfaces. Hairspray is designed for your hair. If it works for you, absolutely fine. But there's acids and different chemicals in a hairspray which may react at a later date in time with the paper. But if it works for you, I'm happy with.
Anita,
Yes?
what grain of paper were you using?
I don't know. I will tell you when I turn it over. Look, 400. It was the mid one. Oh, no, it was the lowest one. So it's quite the grippiest, to be honest. The 800 is the smoothest. The 400 is the roughest. So is that centred?
Yeah, that's good.
You can see that little bit of contamination around the edge, which I can take back. I'm not going to do it all, but I just want to show you how easy it is to take the colour back just on that edge, and you can see there how that's cleaned that up. And quite like that, but I've done the flower too big, so it doesn't fit in there that way. So it doesn't really fit. This is the only size I've got in the black, but you see how that lovely black frame works. So if I'd done it slightly smaller, I think just offsetting it, so you've got much more area here, I think it would look quite nice. That looks okay, doesn't it?
It does. It's good.
Pushed it in. So, like the 400, the grippiest, the sandiest, sandpaperish more feel of the UART paper, but now available in the dark tones, which is wonderful. Like I say, the sanded ones were wonderful anyway, and being able to choose the surface, the smoothness of the surface or the roughness of the surface was a great thing with that paper. But now it's available in dark tones, you've just got even more excitement. So join us next week for a live workshop with Jan Shusmick.